Today, a small step was made in the relation between the American President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. But it was a huge step for the international politics and for Russia. Donald Trump called Vladimir Putin absolutely crazy. Well, about time. And Vladimir Putin immediately fired a shot right back at Trump. How did we get into this point, and what will happen next? Well, one pretty serious thing already happened this afternoon. Howdy, everyone. My name is Konstantin. Welcome to Inside Russia, where usual Russia is explained by the unusual Russian. As usual, you will not find any BS, propaganda, or lies here. Instead, you will find truth, common sense, and logic, and emotions too, because I'm a human being after all. This live stream will be a little different. I'll cut it short after the message. There will be no live stream chat today. Tomorrow, as usual. Now to the message. A pretty interesting day today. You know, Mondays aren't Fridays. Monday mornings are usually not fun. Start of work week. But this Monday morning was an exception. I woke up and voila, right to my mailbox, straight from the 47th US President Donald Trump, a message delivered. Well, it wasn't to me personally, it was a notification from a Twitter. A tweet made by Donald Trump. I've always had a very good relationship with Vladimir Putin of Russia, but something has happened to him. He has gone absolutely crazy. He is needlessly killing a lot of people, and I'm not just talking about soldiers. Missiles and drones are being shot into cities in Ukraine for no reason whatsoever. I've always said that he wants all of Ukraine, not just a piece of it, and maybe that's proving to be right. But if he does, it will lead to the downfall of Russia. Likewise, President Zelensky is doing his country no favors by talking the way he does. Everything out of his mouth causes problems. I don't like it, and it better stop. This is a war that would never started if I were the president. This is Zelensky's, Putin's, and Biden's war, not Trump's. I'm only helping to put out the big and ugly fires that have been started through gross incompetence and hatred. Putin has gone absolutely crazy. Well, it's a good thing that Donald Trump finally starts seeing clearly. Well, somewhat. This war wouldn't have started if I were the president. This is Zelensky's, Putin's, and Biden's war, not Trump's. Well, Mr. Trump, it is Putin's war, as well as all Russians' war. It is my war, because I am a Russian, I'm a Russian national. The aggression that we are all waging on Ukraine, myself included. I paid all the taxes as a good citizen all those years. Where did my taxes go? To the war. But anyway, Mr. Trump, you actually helped Ukraine fight this war that you're saying it's not yours. As the 45th president, you authorized selling US-made javelins to Ukraine, and it helped Ukraine fight Russian tanks stationed in Donbass. Quite a great deal. For 4 years of your presidency, it was your war. And now, all of a sudden, you're saying it's not Trump's war? So which Trump was right? The 45th president or 47th president, you know? It's really interesting. Oh, you must have forgotten. Yeah, perhaps That's the explanation that I find. That's okay. It's forgivable at old age. But Mr. Trump, you couldn't have possibly forgotten what you said just 7 days ago. Just completed my 2-hour call with President Vladimir Putin of Russia. I believe it went very well. Russia and Ukraine will immediately start negotiations towards a ceasefire and, more importantly, the end of the war. The conditions for that will be negotiated between the two parties, as it can be, because they know the details of a negotiation that nobody else would be aware of. The tone and spirit of the conversation were excellent. If it wasn't, I would say so now, rather than later. Russia wants to do a large-scale trade with the United States when this catastrophic bloodbath is over, and I agree, there is a tremendous opportunity for Russia to create massive amounts of jobs and wealth. The potential is unlimited. Well, the tone and the spirit of the conversation were excellent just 7 days ago. These are two very contradictory statements made by the very same person. For 3 months, it was all about calling Putin, offering him carrots instead of threatening him with whips, sending him Witkoff, appeasing him, promising fabulous deals, calling him nice gentleman.
A little conversation with a nice gentleman named Vladimir Putin.
And now, just like that, he's gone absolutely crazy. What an unexpected and abrupt turn. But what's so different Vladimir Putin did this time, in this couple days, so Trump called him absolutely crazy? Russia executed perhaps the most massive strike on Ukraine. Ballistic missiles, drones, cruise missiles, both military and civilian targets were hit. Was it like for the first time? No. It started on February 24th, 2022. And since then, how many millions of strikes did Russia carry out on Ukraine? How many hundreds of thousands of people were killed? And Putin wasn't crazy that time, all those times? He was okay back then? All right, let's say that Donald Trump didn't know about it when he wasn't the president. Let's say he missed 3 years of Russian-Ukrainian war. I don't know, lethargic sleep perhaps, or perhaps he didn't watch TV, didn't read news. I don't know. Is it possible that a person wouldn't know anything that is going on outside of America for 3 years? Let's suppose so, okay? Let's say he didn't know, okay? How many times were strikes executed on Ukraine since January 14th of this year? Hundreds of thousands? How many people died since January 14th? 5,000 people per week. Guess who said that? Donald Trump, and not too long ago, just a few weeks ago. He kept on pressing, this is a useless bloodbath, no one needs it, 5,000 people die every week. Donald Trump knew. He was the person I heard that number from. Donald Trump knew exactly what Putin was doing. Few weeks ago, Donald Trump condemned Putin for carrying out strikes, yet another strike was carried out. And still, Putin was the nice gentleman who Trump spoke for hours. Despite all those strikes, he was a nice gentleman. If you want to know my opinion, Vladimir Putin has been publicly playing Donald Trump like a child for the last 3 months. It started on February 22nd when Donald Trump called Putin and offered to do some talking. Donald Trump delivered Putin two very important things. Number one, he started talking to Putin, and instead of conducting short, down to the point negotiations done from the position of power, threatening the aggressor. And yes, the USA is or was in the position of power back then. Instead, the American president started having nice conversations with the aggressor, publicly legitimizing him. I remember hearing the first result of the talk from that Donald Trump shared on Twitter, I believe, and it shocked me. He said he had a great conversation, how Russia was a great country, and how both countries will be deciding the fate of the Middle East together, Russia and the United States. How the pause in the diplomatic relations was a mistake, and both countries should continue diplomatic relations. Then, later, it was Russia was kicked out of G8 unfairly, and perhaps after the bloodbath is over, Russia needs to be brought back in. You know, in my world, in my eyes, it's called legitimization, becoming legit again, showing that Putin is not a pariah, not the bad guy, not a wanted criminal, but a nice gentleman. Putin was back into the game. And number two, the second thing that Vladimir Putin was delivered, Zelensky was kicked out of the White House, literally. We all remember that story. That was the victory for Vladimir Putin. The victory was created, was done right there and then in the White House. Putin was handed something to show for starting the war in Ukraine. Vladimir Putin for 3 years had nothing to show, nothing. And he kept on saying that Russia was fighting not Ukraine, but the West, led by the USA. And Ukraine was just a proxy of the USA, puppet of the USA. Numerous examples were given how Ukrainian government was being financed and all these things made up, and okay, but the point was it's us not against Ukraine, but against the West led by the USA. And then, right in the White House, in the cradle of the enemy for Russia, Vladimir Zelensky was kicked out. He was cut off from the White House. Okay, that was a scandal, political scandal, in front of everyone, in front of the world. And that was the sign that the USA gave up on Ukraine, that the Ukraine was not a puppet any longer, and Russia reached its goal. It won Ukraine back from the USA, and it wasn't the puppet any longer. Okay, and that Putin has something, and that's what Putin has to show for his victory. And then he's been showing that. He's showed that on the Victory Day parade. He's been talking about that, and Russian propaganda has picked it up. Russia and Putin are victorious. Putin promised, he delivered. But Putin, being such a master manipulator, probably the best, the slyest manipulator in the world, kept on playing Trump. They kept talking on the phone, and Trump was appeasing Putin by offering deals for Russian gas after the bloodbath is over. I heard a company named Chevron, American company, in their conversations, etc. And Putin was lying to Trump, giving him false hopes. Oh yes, Russia wants peace. Yes, Russia will speak to Ukraine. Yes, Russia will participate in the negotiations. oh, you know what? Russia needs direct negotiations with Ukraine without America and without Donald Trump. Why? Because, you kicked Zelensky out. That's not a puppet state of yours anymore. So, get the hell out. We'll deal with them directly. Okay, the USA steps aside. And things like that. And Putin was on the phone talking to Trump, promising things. In the other hand, he was pressing buttons, executing the strikes. And Trump fell for it. Putin was given false hopes, and again, at the same time, Russia kept on hitting Ukraine, strike after strike after strike. It's not secret, we all saw that. And Donald Trump cringed, making public statements, oh, I don't like it. Russia made a mistake. Remember that in the plane after yet another massive strike, after they had talked on the phone hours before? And a couple days ago, Donald Trump finally started seeing clearly. Right after that wonderful conversation, he said to the European leaders informally that Russia really doesn't want peace. Russia wants to continue the war, and Putin thinks he is winning. Donald Trump should have watched my live streams. I've been saying exactly that for months now. His actions delivered a huge blow to the image of the USA in the world. And I feel sad about it. I love the country. My kids are American. I lived in America for a long time. I absolutely love the country. But it's been served a big blow. I know many Americans don't care how their country looks globally from outside the USA, but you just can't remain the global leader with the image hit like that. Whether you know it or you don't, whether you care or you don't, it's been done. It's a reality. By the way, Vladimir Putin answered Donald Trump immediately after Trump called him absolutely crazy. Vladimir Putin explained Trump's statement that Putin had lost his mind, had gone completely crazy. He explained it with softly and nicely, but everyone understood his message. He explained it with emotional overload that Donald Trump has. Do you know what emotional overload means in medical terms? Yes, when a person loses it. So Vladimir Putin outplayed it again by saying that. And everyone in the world listened, and I think they understood. This is a very sad situation, but it has come to an end. There will be no peace negotiations anymore. There will be war. But before I continue, what's next? Before moving to explanation, I want to take this opportunity and thank you again, everyone who is watching my live stream right now, everyone who is a part of Inside Russia community. Thank you, friends. Thank you for watching, for liking, for commenting, and for participating in the live stream chats. There will not be one today, but tomorrow as usual. Thank you for watching it right now, those who are not feeling well about what I'm saying. And I think there are a lot of people like that. If you're a Donald Trump supporter, if you believe him, then I know this message might hurt you. But you know what? I'm not saying anything bad against people, their personalities. I am only informing you of actions that have been done and the consequences of those actions. That's all. So thank you for watching, even though you might not feel easy about my message. But hey, it's like a surgery. It hurts, but then it gets better. Anyway, thank you very much for all your support, for praying along with me and for your love. Thank you. I promise you that every day I will continue my mission. I will continue telling the truth about Russia and informing you of the transformation that Russia is going through, continue going through. Now, what's next? Washington failed this peacekeeping initiative. And I think this is a turning point, so-called watershed event in the course of this war. America proposed an analog of Minsk agreements. I don't know. Those of you who don't remember, it's the agreement that was reached in Minsk between the Ukrainians, Russians, the Germans, and the French, 4 countries, and that was concerned a ceasefire in Donbass, where Russia invaded Ukraine and put the troops in Donbass. For a long time, Russia was denying that, of course, but then later they admitted it. So this proposal was an analog of the Minsk agreements to bring the situation, to declare a 30-day ceasefire, bring the situation to a freeze along the separation line. And that's what happened back then. But the Kremlin refused this initiative, despite the fact that Trump's proposal was radical, very radical. For the sake of the possible ceasefire, possible result, Donald Trump blurred the international assessment of aggression, promised Putin new economic cooperation. He kept on promising. The last he promised right here, just a week ago. He promised gradual lifting of sanctions after the bloodshed would stop. In other words, Trump opened all the doors for Putin. For a long time, Putin was locked up in a cage with no door out, with no exit whatsoever. And then the exit was given to him, and more than one actually. However, the Kremlin chose not peace, but war. The failure of 4 months' efforts from the start of Donald Trump's presidency until now is changing this war, making it different. First, it is now definitely a global war. Initially, the inability to stop this war means that the Rubicon has been crossed. And now there is a very simple choice, either or. Either the surrender of Ukraine and thus the defeat of the United States of America and Europe, or the defeat of Russia, the Kremlin. Donald Trump raised the stakes with this initiative, but Putin also raised the stakes in response. And if Trump doesn't raise the stakes again right now, he falls, then the war will finally become the entrance to the global war. Secondly, there will be no second peacekeeping initiative. It is obvious the peace negotiations are over. No one will attempt to speak in a situation where the talks have already failed, even with the USA trying very hard, and the USA did try very hard. And this means that the war will now go on until one of the sides wins. Third, if it's now an either-or situation, then Europe will actually have to fight. This is one of the biggest consequences of Donald Trump's attempt to bring peace. Fourth, freezing the war, declaring ceasefire, and then some kind of a peace term, could have a cool down effect on militarization. And since there is no peace, the war continues. There's only arms race ahead, a new arms race. Not only during the war, but also after the war. But because this war now will end, I believe, only after a new global security deal is reached between the major countries, the big players, the biggest countries, the USA, India, Europe, China, Pakistan, perhaps Iran, Brazil. There should be a new global security deal born. Just like the one was born after World War II. Remember the Bretton Yalta, dividing Europe into parts, the new security deal that the USSR was part of. I think this new security deal will emerge 10, 15 years from now, 2035, 2040. And fifth, if it's now either or situation, then we all understand that a pathetic continuation of this weak sanctions, international sanctions against Russia that were formed during the 3 years of the war are now impossible. They should be radicalized. Radical steps towards the Kremlin are needed now, and the sanctions are going to change drastically, radically. It is inevitable. Showing that Kremlin that refusing the peace deal, refusing to negotiate, promising Stalin the process, and hitting Ukraine harder and harder with more and more missiles shows that deterrence and appeasement simply don't work. All this follows one simple statement. If freezing along the separation line, the front lines, is not possible, then there is only one scenario. That's either or, win or lose option. And that's it. Now, at the end, let me tell you this. I think Putin is making a big mistake. He is simply getting high from the victories. And yes, last 3.5 months, he has achieved quite a few victories, okay? He is overestimating the power of Russia. In order to fight the war, you need resources. And it's not just Russia against Ukraine in the United States, it's still Russia against the world. China is not on Russia's side. India is not on Russia's side. The rest of the countries, not on Russia's side. Russia has very limited amount of allies, and they're not the strongest in the world. Pardon me, in order to fight, Russia needs lots of money and lots of resources. Money, well, yeah, it can print money. It can take over control of economy. It can introduce complete state control. Now Putin can do that, and he's doing that. But that's not enough. You need people. And Russia is not rich of people. You need technologies, because this war, and especially if it's global war, it's fought buy technologies. And Russia doesn't have technologies. Vladimir Putin is setting himself up in a trap, and that trap will bring him the end, one way or another. He will leave the Kremlin dead or alive. You know, I really wanted to see peace. I pray for peace. I pray for the bloodshed to be over. And somewhat, I am thankful for Donald Trump for even trying, because any peace is better than war. Peace is not an option any longer, at least in the foreseeable future. And now we understand where the situation will be developed. Well, I was going to say I'm going to take my popcorn, but it's too sad of an event. I'm not going to take popcorn. I will be monitoring the situation closely, and I am absolutely confident that Russia, at the end, will lose. Because Russia is not fighting for the just cause. It is the aggressor, not the defender. In World War II, Russia was defending itself. Now it's waging a war. It invaded another country. So Russia will lose, one way or another. Just a matter of time. The saddest thing here is how many more lives will be lost due to this useless war. And I'm also very glad that Donald Trump is seeing clearly now. Perhaps he'll be making steps into the right direction. And that direction, we all well know what it is. Ukraine needs support. Friends, I would like to inform you that I've come up with a new form of content that I think you will find very useful. I call it daily snippets. There is a lot of information comes out of Russia every single day, and I obviously make streams here at YouTube, and I post news that I find important, that I find matter, that tell a lot about Russia and what's going on in Russia in Patreon, on Patreons, at the Patreon account of Inside Russia. 9 news per day, 54 news a week. But I feel that something is missing. Information not as small as the news, but not as big as the live streams, and something in between. So I've decided to bring you daily snippets on Patreon. You don't have to sign up for anything else. If you're a patron of Inside Russia, you will automatically get access to snippets. I posted the first snippet today. The feedback that I've received is overwhelmingly positive, so people like it. I invite you to stop by Patreon account of Inside Russia and check it out. Daily snippet is something that I find important, and I put it in the form of a video from 2 to 5 minutes, not as long as a live stream, with no rehearsal, not much research, a news or a feeling or perhaps understanding of an event that I find important. I will be delivering it to patrons. Friends, thank you so very much. I would like to invite you to tomorrow's stream. It's going to be about the economy of Russia. I have pretty interesting news. Russia's largest combine harvester manufacturer, based in Rostov-on-Don, the company that my dad spent his entire life working for, Russilmash, is closing the doors. According to the owners of Russilmash, this is the worst year in decades. Of that and other news, I will be talking tomorrow. Please tune in. It's going to be interesting. Carthago delenda est. I'll see you all tomorrow.